So right back there somewhere is Crytek, who you might know from games like Crysis, Far Cry, a bunch of others. Now they got a new Xbox One game called Ryse. Some people remember Ryse as a game that Microsoft promoted in trailers. Like in 2010, they showed an E3 trailer for a game called Codename Kingdoms, and then in 2011 they renamed it Ryse. Once they signed a deal with Microsoft, they kind of made it into a Kinect game. That didn't work quite as well as they wanted.
And then we explored this Kinect experience in a number of prototypes. Whether this is like navigation problems, whether it's combat problems. So what we said is, okay, this is cool, but core gamers may not yet be convinced to use Kinect.
It's sort of the human part of Kinect that is the toughest nut to crack. It's like getting everyone to do a sword swing sort of the same way. We want to make this really kind of, immersive experience. And when you have to teach players how to just do basic actions, you're going to spend a lot of your time doing that rather than just making them be immersed in the world.
So Ryse, the version that you're going to see coming out, it's been in development about 2 years, and it's a third-person combat game. They want to make sure that people know that this is a controller game and that you only use Kinect a little bit. You're running around, you're using a sword and shield, you're deflecting attacks, you're hitting people with kind of short burst attacks, and then you have what they call executions, which is a lot of button prompts will appear over enemies' heads, and you can choose different ways to execute them. They're being a little cagey about the specifics of the executions, but the idea is it's not an automated thing. It's set up to give you choices.
The religious rule, so to say, in the combat is flow. Like going into combat, going into fighting it, executing it, going to the next guy, execute. Once you did that, and once you decide which type of execution you're going to apply on this player, you'll have a short-term boost usually as well. So for example, health regeneration.
Just hearing that being described and watching it being played, it seems like something that pretty much anyone can do. It doesn't seem like there's really as much of a mastery to it.
Oh, there is.
Okay,
Certainly
so where does that come from? Because it seems like most of the attacks are pretty straightforward, and it's more the choices in how you do it.
The very core is simple to access. But if you want to master it, it takes some effort, right? But as you master the previous executions, there's new ones coming in that are more complex to hit as well.
So where does the challenge come from? Is it timing? Is it complexity?
Timing and picking the right guys first, like making strategic choices. Which execution do I pick to inform my decision? And so for legendary players, gamers that are really kick-ass, they are going to be able to flow from one enemy to another, to another, to another, and then into another wave and keep flowing.
I think one of the interesting things for Crytek is they're going up against a bunch of sequels. Like most games in the third-person action genre that are popular these days have had multiple sequels. They're on like their 4th or 5th game, so they kind of have to put their own spin on it in competing with these other games.
You have to kind of blaze your own path, right? You have to figure out something that is different from everybody else. Like me as a core gamer, I don't want to play, God of War, Crytek's version or Assassin's Creed, Crytek's version. Crytek has made first-person games, and we have all this awesome tech where we show stuff at, high detail close up. So pulling a camera like way back here, doesn't necessarily make sense for us.
One of the early frameworks that we set up to build the story around, or the experience that we were seeking around, was this concept of 6 inches to 6 feet. And basically what we mean by that is we wanted to own the intensity of battle, right? The close-up, you and me close together. How do I look? How do I feel?
They made a big deal about kind of how the camera bounces around between all these different options. It seems to work well in the version they showed us. It's pretty impressive. They get the camera up pretty close to behind the player. So the whole point is they want to kind of show some emotion on players.
Video games have always kind of been like a bad high school play, where like kind of people are missing their cues, and it's like, we need to march forward, and then the guy would turn around and walk through a bush.
We're taking performance capture to another level, both with the amount of actors and the fidelity that we're dealing with them. We've had on set more than 12 actors being PCAP'd at the same time, so it's very much like directing big scenes in movies. But the difference here is that you're standing in a PCAP stage, and basically they can only see what the set looks like on a monitor.
Traditionally, third-person games do not deliver emotions that much. They deliver body emotions, body language, like tiredness and things like that. You can convey that, but the facial expression and truly like detailed expression of pain or anger or sadness is something that hasn't been done in a third-person systemic way.
Obviously the graphics are going to be outstanding and look amazing, but what we wanted to put on top of that is that we really wanted to have the audience experience the characters and see the characters and create characters that have actual emotion. And to really build that emotional connection, we felt that we needed to use the film language, the television language of getting close to the character, seeing how he reacts, how he feels about whatever is confronting him.
You might think of Crytek as a company not really known for story, like the Crysis games specifically, not much story in them. So it's kind of interesting that Crytek is putting more of a focus here on Ryse's story. You know, we'll see how it goes. It's an interesting experiment for them. It's certainly something new. From what we saw in the demo, it's really hard to get a sense of how it's going to differ from most games, because a lot of like the facial animations weren't in, a lot of the stuff that they're talking about is not in yet. So it's not that it's doing bad, it's just not there yet.
And for our company, Ryse is a major step forward in difference also, because it's a whole new IP, it's a whole new technology, it's to be also honest, it's a whole new team as well. So there's a lot of firsts here, you know. And then again, the most critical pressure, it's a launch title for Xbox One, and we don't want to disappoint.
So Ryse is very clearly like a new franchise. You know, it's different than a lot of stuff that's come before, but it's also very similar. You know, they have, you know, the up-close camera stuff, they have some of the execution options, they have a lot of interesting kind of ideas for combat with the flow and everything. It's definitely not what you would expect from a third-person action game, but it's not an entirely new genre. You know, it's an old genre brought up to date in some interesting ways. Whether they pan out or not is going to be interesting to see.